Alrighty, we are live for your weekly dose of common sense here at Channel 511 Studio C, Common Sense, Ohio. You can check us out at commonsenseohioshow.com. You can check us out on YouTube. You can check us out on Facebook. You can check us out at Norm's house. You can check us out wherever you go. We are there. We would appreciate it, though. Look, just one small favor, like and subscribe. If you're on YouTube, just hit the little subscription button. Even if you ignore it after that, it helps us. We are obviously trying to grow our presence and share the wealth of common sense throughout the world. It is happening slowly but surely, and we're doing it the hard way, organically.
World domination takes a bit of time.
World domination is not so easy.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of world domination, it is January 17th, 2025. On this day, back in 1928, turns out Stalin banishes Trotsky.
Oh, man, that was a big one, too.
Yeah, Bolshevik leader Trotsky. But really, Trotsky was an old Menshevik, right? An old. So there's a lot of interesting history, and much of which can be learned by just reading a simple book that's only about that thick called Animal Farm, which tracks this quite nicely.
The big lesson for me would be, if you saw how that played out, would be, if you think that you can run away from Russia and go to Mexico City and you'll be okay,
No.
You're not.
Yeah.
You're
not
safe.
This is a telling reminder of what communism leads to, right? Because in order
assassinations,
yes, millions of people dead,
yes,
because Trotsky was one of their own. He was one of their own. Now, I guess going back, I'm no expert on all this, but I'm sort of reciting my high school history, which is interesting. They probably don't teach us in high school anymore. But,
no.
You had the Mensheviks and you had the Bolsheviks. The Mensheviks were still Marxists, but they were like more socialism Marxists, and they were going to have a democracy of some ilk. And then the Bolsheviks come along and ultimately succeed in the revolution. And then when what's his name died, the granddaddy of Mom. So Lenin dies, Stalin takes over, and you still had Trotsky out there, who was more like this. We're going to turn the world into this communist utopia, and we're going to make it all great for everybody. Well, that is an inherent conflict with Stalin's quest for power, because he wanted it only in the Soviet Union, and where he had all the control over everything. Yeah. And so he just said, well, that's easy. I'll just get rid of you.
Yeah, Stalin wanted to be the next czar, really.
Yeah, he wanted,
I mean, it wasn't going to be a hereditary system, but he wanted to be the king.
He wanted to be he was the dictator, for lack of a better way to put it. And if everybody remembers Animal Farm, there was the book and there was a little cartoon movie. I remember watching that. And at the end, it sort of flashes back and forth between like the animals who are now living in the farmer's house. And for a second, it flashes to them like the farmers, and then back to the animals, and then back to the farm, making the point that meet the new boss, he's the same as the old boss, to quote Roger Daltrey.
Exactly.
Great. Probably the best movie about this that was kind of accidentally very critical of the Soviet Union is a movie called Reds.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic. So it shows the stars in their eyes, people like Trotsky that were very theoretical, very oriented towards,
the utopia,
doing the best for human beings in a wrong way, but
they believe the insanity.
They believe the insanity. Yeah. He probably would not have authorized killing the Tsar's family, for example. He seemed to be more, as I said, theoretical, but Stalin was a butcher. And Stalin was a completely different guy. And he sent somebody with an ice pick who stuck it in Trotsky's skull in Mexico City. So, getting as far away as you can from Stalin, like on the other side of the earth, it doesn't work.
It's a telling reminder that ideology ultimately eats its own. It has to.
Yeah.
It has to, because the theory is the authoritarian has the control, because that's necessary to wake everybody up and realize that you're just wrong about how you're living with your individual freedoms and identities.
Yeah.
So you have to have the boot on you for a while to realize that, to usher in the utopia. But even if that were to happen, guys like Stalin, they're not going to give up the power. They're not going to do it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that
great stuff, Steve.
It's all I do is read the history.
Speaking of history, I guess maybe the New York Times and the Washington Post got this idea from Stalin of whiting out people from the history. So like
blotting them away.
If you look at old pictures where there's Stalin, Trotsky, and Lenin all together, during the Stalin years, he had Trotsky removed, like he didn't even exist, like it never happened.
Yeah, sort of like
like the COVID stories. That
rewriting the dictionary and eliminating words and changing definitions. When you have this fungible standard of reality, this is what it leads to.
Yeah.
So
and this is why.
Well, if you go research things like the Russian collusion hoax and COVID, you will find that researchers have found that stories that were in the vault at the New York Times that the public would have access to, a record of history, they've gone back and doctored those stories.
Yep. And the definitions in Webster's online have changed.
Which is Stalinist.
It's very Stalinist, right? It's Orwellian stuff, This is what caused Orwell to write the book. And he was a communist himself, I think, on some level. But he understood the dangers of this. It's like when you start altering reality to promote your ideology, that's exactly what Stalin did.
Yeah.
That is what Stalin did.
Yeah. Control the information.
So when we call things Orwellian, we're really saying Stalian.
For sure.
Right.
Not stallion. Stalin.
Yeah.
For sure.
My word.
That's what that book was about, basically. Well, LA fire, quick update. They have found that leading up to the fire, this is so sad, 100 of the FD trucks were in the shop.
Fire department trucks.
Wow.
100 of them were in the shop. Just because in what the FD chief is saying, and she is having a huge battle with the mayor of LA.
Yeah.
And
who's at fault?
Yeah. And she is saying, well, you took away funds, $18 million or whatever from our budget. That was to fix the freaking trucks.
Oh.
That's why they weren't pre-deployed, because we didn't have enough to pre-deploy them.
Because, and this is really a deeper problem. But before I get, I'll do the deeper problem first. It's like, it is, when you think, particularly as a leader, you can indulge your every whim, and the realities of the world don't count. In other words, it doesn't matter how much money we have. We should do it because it's right, and this is what we're going to do. It doesn't matter what the cost is, because the cause should prevail, and the cause is what counts. And you can't live that way. Anybody who's tried to manage a household understands you can't live that way. I would love to take $10,000 vacations twice a year, but I can't do it. We don't have the money to do it. I would love in my law practice to get new furniture for everybody, or we talk in the studio all the time about updating the studio and doing different things. Like, we can't. We have a budget. We have reality. But these people governing these places don't live in that same reality. They think they can just do whatever they want. So we'll just take the fire department money. No big deal. We'll just spend it somewhere else because we want to protect this, or we want DEI over here, or we need this. And
they're literally in La La Land.
They live in La La Land. LA, La La Land.
La La Land.
Just the land of kooks.
Indulge, all of these fantasies.
Crazy whims that sound good to them. They don't even sound. Here's what's interesting: is like they don't even sound altruistically good anymore. No. They just sound absurd. Like, we're going to protect the smelt, but we're not, so we don't have water.
Well, that assistant chief that was thrust on her makes $399,000 a year. She's a DEI hire, and there's video all over the internet of her putting on this clinic. And one of the things she says, if there's a man that's too heavy for me to pick up, right?
We should have pulled this clip.
It's his fault. He should not be in that position.
Well, we would have to ask how he got himself into that situation. It's like, well, maybe a fire started.
So he's going to burn to death because you can't pick him up because you changed the athletic standards that all firemen are to meet, whether they're man or female. And this is exactly what Hegseth was talking about during his defense confirmations, is that men and women, fine, you can hire either one, but they got to be able to do the same job at the same specification. Right. And if a woman can do it, bingo.
So here's where we got to be careful, and I'm not disagreeing with this, but here's where we got to be careful. When you have these kind of problems, people tend to start to peel back the layers of the onion, and they expose all the problems. But it's not to say, I don't think necessarily, that all these problems are the cause of the fire or their inability to put out the fire. I think there's probably some of that going on, but there's probably other things that, like what we just talked about, like fire trucks. Who knows if fire trucks would have helped this? Probably not, because there was no water anyway. It's like this. It's like this world of incompetence that's going on out there.
That's right.
That resulted in this. And I think it's good to expose the rot and all these problems, but it doesn't, like, I don't think it would be a mistake logically to say, because there's no fire trucks, or because there's not the money, we didn't have fire trucks. Because no fire trucks, there was a fire. It's so much deeper than that.
So you've heard Gavin Newsom. He has, sorry to be so.
No, you're fine.
But Gavin Newsom has asked for a federal Marshall Plan, like how they rebuilt Europe. And I would like to remind Gavin Newsom of one little proviso on the Marshall Plan, right? So Hitler, right, could no longer run Germany under the Marshall Plan. And Tojo could no longer run Japan under the Japanese version of the Marshall Plan. So I would invite the mayor and the governor, at the very least, I think Congress should insist, those two people need to resign if the rest of us are going to rebuild California on our nickel.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They need to go.
Well, look, I mean, when he was asked, what do you mean by the Marshall Plan? Did you hear the dribble? It was like 5 minutes of dribble that came out of his mouth about, oh, we're talking to these leaders. We're talking to these people. There's going to be this coalition of so-and-so and so-and-so.
Right.
There was no answer to that. So he's using these terms, and it's all BS. It is all crap. He's got no plan. We're going to have a Marshall Plan. Like,
Steve,
what does that mean?
Steve, latest I heard, $250 billion. Last week I said 150. Now the estimate is $250 billion. And so, like, Leonardo DiCaprio donated $1 million.
Oh, good for you.
Oh, come on.
Leo.
Yeah.
What's Sean Penn doing? He's got to be in the mix of this somehow.
Well, it's really interesting to compare and contrast all of the national tragedies. First you have Hawaii, then the South Carolina area, North Carolina area, and now you got L.A. It's like how we're addressing them so differently. So no Marshall Plan was ever discussed for Hawaii.
It was an equally catastrophic government failure.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you've got, the southern
people in tents.
Yeah, exactly.
In the winter.
Yeah. And then you got the South, basically whether it was misinformation, disinformation, or just uninformed about how it was being handled down there. And then they had a concert to help things out down in Atlanta, that sort of thing. And then now they're saying, wow, L.A., we've got it together. We're going to have a benefit concert quickly to help raise funds. It's like, okay. Well, it's just so you can just tell where things are.
It's such
the South, the West, Hawaii, that sort of thing. Yeah. And it's so funny, this lineup they have for the Fire Aid benefit concert on January 30th. They did ask Earth, Wind, and Fire, and they're going to perform.
Goodness.
Nothing against that band. Nothing. But it's just, really? You'd want Earth, Wind, and Fire on there?
Yeah, it's a Boogie Wonderland, man.
Yeah. Maybe the name of the band, you might not want to do that.
It's like, you can't make that up. Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Anyway, but great band. I love them. But anyway, yeah.
You brought up a point last week that I heard Bill Burr, of all people, was on, I don't know if it was Jimmy Kimmel or one of those late nights. And, he's sort of gone a different direction these days, but he's chastising the insurance companies.
Yeah.
And he even screamed Mangini, it was free Mangini or whatever his name is. Or free Luigi or whatever.
Yeah.
Wow.
But Brett, you brought up this point. I think it's worthy of discussing because people are missing this. It's so easy to criminalize the insurance companies, but California essentially ran them out of business.
Absolutely.
They regulated the homeowners insurance companies out of business by cramming price controls, regulations, and they made it impossible for insurance companies to insure houses because it just cost too much.
Right. Yeah.
And instead, California was going to take it over.
Yeah.
So Stalin-esque-ly, they were going to take over the insurance industry and run it. And it's a complete catastrophic failure, predictably.
Yeah, because the California program, from what I understand, they did not acquire enough reinsurance to boost their plan to cover this.
Right.
event.
They didn't go buy the insurance they needed to create the underwriting necessary to cover the losses.
Yeah.
So it's just when people just say, "Oh, blame the evil insurance company." So what we have here, it's sort of like the housing crisis. Like the government has horrible, stupid, bad policy.
Yeah.
Absurd.
Yeah.
Because it sounds good and looks good at the time. The policy is a catastrophic failure, and it has the consequence of running all private insurance industry out of the homeowner business.
Certainly the bulk
of it, out of the homeowner business in California. And then when there's a fire, they blame the insurance companies,
which is
not the stupid government policy that created it.
Which is like every vice president of those insurance companies that looked at the risk versus the benefit and said, you know what, we can't make any money here. Those guys should get a bonus Because look at the atrocity that happened, and they don't have to pay for it.
They don't have to pay for it.
They made the
right.
right decision.
They did.
They did.
Right. They did.
Correct.
Because look, you can't. There's no phantom dollars out there, folks.
No.
Like you can't just. You have to. As my buddy Jay, the Exchequer, always says, like these folks live in the world of what they want it to be, not what the world as it is. You know,
For
it's
sure.
like they live in the should be land where, well, it should be that everybody has insurance. All right, well, great.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We still have to implement that somehow. Dollars still are dollars.
Unicorns and ice cream for everybody.
Yeah, for everybody. Yippity doo
Yeah.
dah.
Well, and it leads to this too. As I saw this pop up as well too. So it goes up to the federal money coming down. Then just recently, U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson said that Congress will likely provide billions in disaster aid to help California recover from devastating wildfires, but indicated he might set a new precedent by placing conditions on that emergency funding on policy and political differences with the Democratic-led state and the city of Los Angeles.
Which he
so
should.
so now we're going
Which
into
he
politics. Again, it's the snowball effect. If you just did the right thing in the beginning,
Yep.
no one goes begging.
Yep.
Well, it was a political
Jeez.
decision.
If you make a deal with the devil, you're stuck with the devil's terms.
Exactly.
So when
Oh my
people
God.
object, once again, when they object and say, oh, you're putting politics into this, it was a political decision to strip the fire department of funding.
Exactly.
That was politics.
It was a
All this is
political
politics.
decision
The
not,
insurance.
not to call the forests to take care of them so they don't have the fire
the
problem.
underbrush.
The
right?
underbrush.
All those eucalyptus plants that just blow up.
Yeah.
Ignore reservoirs. I mean, look.
That's what happened in Canada. The Canada fires were from new-grown, fast-growing forests.
All right.
Unmanaged. Unmanaged for the sake of, and that's all they could
look,
do.
this again, this comes back to this notion that the Earth is somehow above us.
Right.
And look,
right.
I
Rather than people.
than people, right? So look,
Yeah.
I'm all about protecting the Earth.
Yes.
It's God's beauty.
Right.
I mean, it really is on every level. If you go look around, it really is on every level.
Right.
So I'm not out for destroying it. And in fact, if you want to see the opposite of this, go visit a place like I was in Estonia and Tallinn back in the 90s or the early 2000s, and it was after the fall of the Soviet regime. And like you could clearly see the architecture and the difference between what is beautiful and what is crapola.
Yes. Right.
And the Soviets would bring in these literally concrete block walls and stack them like houses of cards.
Yeah.
And you could just see like the sealant as they were sealed together. It was ugly crap.
Yeah.
It did nothing to protect the earth and the environment and create a place that is not only beautiful to live in, but also respectful of the earth.
Yeah.
That can be done. There is an accord
Right.
that can be reached. And it's not letting fires burn or saying we're just going to let the forest live naturally. And if it means they burn, that means they burn.
Well,
Like,
look at
who
the-
are these arrogant
Look at
pricks?
the difference between our design for 3 Mile Island. We did not have a meltdown through the concrete because they poured a concrete base. Whereas in Chernobyl, they had a gravel base. And
Right.
when they had their meltdown there, it went right into the groundwater.
Yeah.
That's why they had to abandon, I don't know what it is, 100 square miles or
It's still a disaster area.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
it's
got
still-
three-legged, three-eyed foxes and whatever.
It just is, this notion that somehow
When you don't care, you don't care.
or you
Right.
or you prioritize things that above normal human behavior, right? So it's
Yeah.
like we're living in California. Humans are living in California. They
That's
want to
right.
have the American life. They
That's
want to
right.
have a normal life, and they're entitled to have it. This is
right.
what our country is
That's
built
right.
on. And these people hate our country, so they don't care about that. So they would rather say, all right, well, it's good. I'll bet you there are people celebrating that these houses burned.
Oh,
Oh,
absolutely.
yes.
Bet you anything.
And like at
Yes.
the Sierra
Well,
Club.
it's what they
and
deserve.
Greenpeace.
So now we're
Yeah.
back to like Mother Earth.
Right.
Yeah.
And they
Great.
are going to try, in spite of Newsom saying he's going to waive requirements, they are going to try to prevent these rebuilds.
You know they will.
You know they
So
will.
this is 2008 all over again. So here's what happens. They are, if anyone thinks that you're going to be able to build a house on a half acre or quarter acre lot in
Between the
California,
highway and the ocean.
No chance.
That little beach.
they
come
are
on.
going to just basically zone that out of existence. And you would say that's a good thing, I suppose. There are people that would say that's a good thing because it's gorgeous and you have a good view of the ocean. And you have all
Unless
this
you
stuff.
own it. Like you got 15 million in that.
Right.
Unless you're
Well,
the guy.
and unless you want to have cheap, affordable housing, because then what happens? You like everything is. This is all Thomas Sowell in a nutshell, right?
Yeah.
You've got everything comes back to scarcity, and what you have done through zoning is made land scarce.
Yeah.
So that's going to do what? drive the price up of land, and even if the sticks and bricks eventually will sort of normalize, there'll be the materials to build a house aren't going to go up that high, but you're not going to be able to build it on land. So they're going to stack people, Soviet style, in cities in these high rises.
That's what they
That's
want.
their plan.
That's right, and that's why they're making private automobile ownership more and more difficult. That's the idea behind EVs. That's the idea behind.
You hate to sound conspiracy theorist, but it's not. I mean,
it's not. No, because there's white papers coming out of the Department of Housing and Urban Development about this.
Yeah.
They do not want people to move out of the central cities. They want, in fact, people in the suburbs to be compelled to move back into central cities,
where they control energy. They control your utilities.
Right.
They control everything at
Everything.
that point.
They can control in and out
everything.
of the city.
Yeah.
They can
And then
they
they go
can
buy
block
up the
you
land.
in. I mean, again, that's
You bet.
extreme.
Well, we talked
But you
about
could.
congestion pricing last week in New York City, and that is forcing people to not be able to come in because they get taxed every time. If they come in 100 times a day to deliver pizza, it's $9 every time. That's $900.
Yeah, this is like Agenda 23 or whatever this is. I mean, this is insanity.
It's
And
insanity.
if they can fix the food desert situation, they'll have it all figured out. Seriously, if you think about it, because the food deserts are existing. I mean, in regards to urban areas, but that's not an attraction to come back in. But if they can fix the food desert scenario,
well, that takes law
will be it.
enforcement.
Yeah, exactly.
That
And
takes law
God
enforcement.
knows we can't do law enforcement.
What I'm thinking ahead is like if they fix that problem, then they truly are really going to push forward to go. You come downtown. You come down. You live downtown.
question.
That's right.
Because you can't live downtown without a grocery store.
Somebody's got to
can't.
provide food,
Right,
And,
right.
and that's
kind of a missing link there.
and they're trying to promote
Yeah.
this human or non-organic food, right? Lab-made food, protein substitutes, all this. It just is. It's crazy. It's like Brave New World stuff, or Fahrenheit 51 stuff, and it's happening.
Lab-grown meat. There you go, people.
Yeah.
That's what you
I'm
need.
sure that's what you're thinking you want.
As I'm looking at prices to buy a quarter or a half a cow for this year. So,
Well, President Biden did a bunch of commutations yesterday. 2,500 drug convicts, federal drug convicts, who the headline is, I have not researched it, so I can't say if it's true or false, but the allegation is that over the course of the years, history in federal drug sentencing and the amount of punishment you had to receive, it changed quite a bit. Like 10 years ago, maybe you go to jail for 15 years for a certain crime, and then 10 years later, it's 10 years. So what he's done allegedly is justified all that so that everybody's being punished the same for the same crime rather than depending on when you were convicted and what the penalty was at that time. So anyway, my theory is the reason he's doing these drug convicts, which we all have a little sympathy just naturally that, like we hope those people, because it's nonviolent ones that he commuted. So we're all thinking, oh, well, okay, let's have a little mercy on those people. But what he's going to throw at us in the next couple of days, this is Norm's theory, is Jim Biden, Liz Cheney, Benny Thompson, and Fauci.
yeah, I think you're probably right.
I think this is to soften up those pardons, and I think they're coming.
I mean, look, I have this love-hate relationship with these pardons because it just seems so random at times. So you always wonder what is really, who's pulling strings behind the scenes to go get a pardon.
And what else is nonviolent, like not paying your taxes? You let Hunter off. What about all the other, I'm sure, millions or thousands of people that are in?
Yeah, they're short timers, but it's like you wonder, and we can all, like you said, we all have some sympathy. Somebody gets addicted to drugs, they get sucked into the drug trade, and one way or another. And I've had plenty of federal cases where guys are doing 5-6 years in the federal pen that they didn't need to go to the federal penitentiary for what they did. On the other hand, there are guys that are doing 20 years for the same stuff, and they did deserve to go. I mean, and maybe there's a few in the stragglers going the opposite on each way, but so I don't mind necessarily having them pardoned. But you bring up a point, Norm, is like, what about the others? Why not pardon them all then?
Yeah.
Like who? So I always look for the motivator or the motivation behind these things. Money, power, ego. I suspect there's money behind this on some level.
Yeah.
If you've got somebody, some millionaire's taking an interest, or a family member or a friend, whatever it is, has probably donated money somewhere to get a pardon. And,
Definitely.
And
right.
You don't just randomly pardon a nonviolent drug dealer or a drug user and not everybody else.
Like that big Wall Street guy that Clinton pardoned, Mark somebody. Remember that pardon?
Yeah.
The guy's like a multi-billionaire, and as soon as he got pardoned, he came back from Switzerland or wherever he was hiding. So he never spent a day in prison.
Yep.
Yeah.
And definitely,
and money changed hands, right?
No question.
Money changed hands.
Yeah, well, and even with 2,500, I mean, what's the template on that?
Yeah, why 2,500 and why those guys? I'd like to know how they were selected.
I mean, yeah.
It just is.
That's definitely not an individual by individual basis as you think most commutations are.
Yeah.
That he sat down, read it. It's like, yeah, that guy deserves it. She deserves it. But 2,500, that's just a template going, you serve this. Now the law says you should have served this. You're done.
If that were the case, I'd almost rather have it that way because at least there's some rhyme or reason to it.
He certainly didn't read 2,500 cases.
Is it the luck of it? Well, I wonder if his people did. I wonder if his people, like, who's donating what to get on the 2,500 list?
And it could be.
Or is it just everybody that meets these random criteria, or these, not random, but these certain criteria.
Right.
So you're X age, you've been in for X amount of time, and your crime was this, and your sentencing guideline score was below this.
Right.
I think
at least I could get my head around it.
I think this was an easy swing because if you remember, Trump did the very same kind of part.
Yeah, he did. They all did.
On drug convicts.
Okay.
And, particularly black African American that at least in the analysis of the batch that he pardoned, allegedly did not get fair trials or got excessive sentences when compared to somebody of a different color. That was the allegation. I remember Trump doing this, and he had a retinue of people coming to the mic saying, "God bless you, Mr. President." He got all kinds of good people.
Yeah, and look, I have the same skepticism about the political motives behind that as I do behind what Biden's doing.
No question.
Right.
I mean, look, is it a good thing? Yes.
Look at the flip-flop Trump has done on TikTok, for example. So running up to the election, him and his national security experts were all saying TikTok is a Chinese communist spyware in your kid's phone, right? Got to get rid of TikTok. Now he has his team, as he's coming in, he's flipped on TikTok and said, well, we got to work something out. In fact, he filed a brief with the Supreme Court because they may decide TikTok today. He filed a brief saying, give me a little time. Don't decide. Defer for 30 days. Give me a chance to negotiate this with the Chinese, right? Because, and the stated reason is because he actually said this. I kind of like TikTok now because they help my campaign.
Of course.
I'm like,
it's classic Trump.
And I'm like, Trump, you mean because it helped you, now it's a good idea? I mean, that's classic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that is so surface oriented. Like, does he even understand the geopolitics of this?
Who knows?
Or is it just like, hey, you help me, I help you?
Maybe.
What the hell?
Maybe.
Yeah.
What the hell?
I think it's probably deeper than that. I think it's probably not better, but maybe deeper.
Right. Maybe deeper.
It's still about relationships with China.
Yes.
God Almighty.
Wow.
God help us.
Wow.
God help us. I mean, this is the kind of stuff I've always worried about Trump. Just.
Well, look, let's.
Oh God.
Speaking of Trump, you want to cover the confirmation hearings real quick?
Oh yeah. So Pam Bondi, Pete Hegseth, they both went before the Senate. Minus, by the way, our governor not being able to pick out our second senator, and who should have been at these hearings. But we're denied.
That's true. I never thought about.
What's the timeline? How's this work?
Vance resigned January 9th. We've all known since November the 5th that Vance was leaving.
Right. Yeah.
Presumably, there's a few candidates that you've considered.
It's been, almost 2.5 months.
Yeah.
Norm?
It's like, dude,
take your hat off, throw it in the ring.
I'm going to say the rug's worn down from people walking in and out of his office saying, hey, think about me.
So anyway, they've had these hearings. And
Mr. DeWine, we've had our differences, but I'd like to be senator.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, why not?
If you want to throw the bone at somewhere that
it's only a couple of years, right?
So Ohio's absent senator is not getting committee assignments,
Right.
not getting chairmanships of certain subcommittees, not getting to vote, not even getting to approve of Trump's.
I always question.
It's so incompetent.
Like, is it? What is the motive?
What's the big decision
the
deal?
motive?
Yeah, right. I mean, why is it
Well,
so big of a
DeWine
deal?
is a
He's not
dither.
right.
He's not that busy.
He's a dither.
Like-
he cannot decide anything because I don't think he has a philosophy. He wants everybody to like him. He's like Trump and like Clinton. I've always said that these guys just want what they want is everybody to give
Adulation.
them. Oh,
Yeah.
you have the first slice of pizza, Mike.
Yes.
You're the cool guy here at the bong party. Whatever.
It could very well be that. Maybe it's an ego trip on his part. He just wants,
So anyway,
he's waiting on checks to clear. It sounds like
maybe.
These hearings took place, and the most hilarious thing about these hearings is they want to focus in on two things with Pete Hegseth. Not about our relationship with the military and what we're doing vis-a-vis NATO and CATO in the South Pacific and what are we doing with China, Russia, Ukraine? None of those questions. What they want to know about with Pete is, are you still drinking and are you still fooling around on your wife?
right.
Like that's how we're choosing our sec def now.
They're trying to Kavanaugh him.
Yeah. Oh, they did.
Yeah.
Though, and it was primarily the women plus Tim Kaine.
Yeah, of course.
He's an atrocity. I mean, he's just that the guy is just the worst. And the best answer was what's his name? Mark Wayne. Mark Wayne, the senator from God, where's he from? Anyway, he had the best retort to his fellow senators. He said, "You all have arrived here, and you know the people who were drunk here in the Senate chambers voting on things. And how many of you have asked your fellow senators who are divorced, when are you going to resign because you cheated on your wife?"
Right. I saw that.
I mean, that was gorgeous. And I'm just like,
Well, the point
can we
is,
get
right,
back
it's
to
like,
reality here
Get off your moral high horse or stay on it, one or the other.
and resign
Right.
yourselves?
Yeah, don't have it both ways.
Yeah.
Slinging this crap when just you can just go turn back the clock and look at all the crazy morality or immoral behavior they tolerated on their own side, and now they're not gonna. Now they're bringing up this crap like it's the worst on the other side. It's just
Steve,
like
It just makes great TV and great news.
The
That's-
Congress,
it's all show.
Yep.
the Congress itself has a $50 million slush fund to pay off allegations of sexual
Is that
harassment.
true?
That is true. And guess what? No public record access to that. And people are pushing for it now because they want to
Good
see.
grief.
They want to see
Who funds that?
the U.S. taxpayer.
Jeez.
Yeah, they have a slush
the
fund to
hell?
pay off. Now they'll say, "Oh, it's it's wage and hours disputes, and it's
Employment related disputes, but it's really a sexual harassment fund.
you bet,
Because it's been used for
you
that.
bet." And so they say no public access because it has to do with human resources. Yeah,
Yeah, that's troubling.
that's
Yeah,
very troubling
very.
and true.
Yeah, and then these are the people up on their moral high horses
Exactly.
throwing stones at Hegseth.
Exactly right.
Wow.
Unbelievable. Well, he held his own. I mean, he was.
He was great.
I mean, he just.
Yeah.
What I like about this, and maybe the Kavanaugh example is a good one because for the first time, and maybe not, maybe Clarence Thomas sort of stood up to it as well. But Kavanaugh, I think everybody thought he would back down when he was attacked like this.
Yeah.
And
Fold up and go.
And I was thinking this morning, I don't even know why I was thinking about it, as I was getting ready for the show or whatever. I had I back in my mind, I sort of went back to the Kavanaugh hearings where he stood up there and you could tell he was emotional about it.
Oh, he was in tears.
And he just delivered a retort to all these accusations.
Right.
And look, believe him or not believe him, it doesn't matter. But he wasn't going to back down. He's like, listen, no. And then we had people saying, well, they should just choose somebody else who doesn't have this history. And I'm like, well, where does that slippery slope end? Because if they make up an accusation, first of all, we're all flawed, so you can always find something. And if somebody's willing to make up an accusation, then they could do that about everybody, and everybody would back down.
Right.
Like, what does the innocent man do? And I'm not suggesting Kavanaugh's innocent. I'm not suggesting he's guilty. I don't know. But he stood up and said, I didn't do it.
Goes back to Clarence Thomas.
And it goes back to...
This is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks.
Yeah, it was.
That's what he said.
And
that's what it was.
And
there wasn't any physical or corroborative proof of anything Anita Hill said.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, she followed Clarence from job to job. Wherever he went, she followed as his assistant.
And Bork.
So he must have been
That was
terribly
Biden too,
abusive.
wasn't it?
Right.
Now it's getting borked. Is the
And
that's
Clarence
because-
Thomas was
and
Biden.
Clarence Thomas was
Right.
Biden. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, so the other one, like we said, was Pam Bondi, and they hammered her. Unlike Merrick Garland, he didn't get hammered this way. They hammered her and like, are you going to do what the president tells you to do with regard to how you run the DOJ? Well, Merrick Garland sure as hell did.
Well, they were accusing her of intending to weaponize the DOJ, which is exactly what
They did. Exactly right. And she's promising to take it apart.
Yeah, and
to
she's
not
saying,
do that.
Well, she had a statement that she's made that she's going to investigate certain investigators and investigate certain prosecutors.
Right.
And somebody just sort of clips that out of context, and she turns around. I mean, she said, "Well, you should listen to what the rest I said. I'm going to investigate bad ones, or the ones who did bad things,
Right?
Because nobody is above the law. Like she held her own.
Yeah,
she held her own. But I think we're in this day and age where it's lost its luster. These kind of attacks. It's all just their own masturbatory edification on the cameras.
and shitification.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
It's like it's like it's just this self-titillating nonsense now. It's like because now Kavanaugh and Clarence Thomas before him, they've just said we're not tolerating it.
Yeah.
We're gonna look. I'll stand by my record.
Right.
It is what it is. I didn't do what you're saying.
Let
me speak, you son of a bitch.
Right. Vote me up. Vote me down.
Right.
But I'm not.
I'm
going,
not backing
I'm
down.
not going to. I'm not going to make your job easy.
I've got a job if you don't hire me, quote unquote.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't need your nonsense.
I don't need your nonsense. Exactly.
It's interesting as we get to January 20th, what is happening in the federal government. So yesterday, the FBI announced that they are closing their DEI office. Well, that's interesting. 2 days before Kash Patel comes in there and does it?
2 days before the new sheriff comes in.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Now we've got a deal in Hamas.
Yeah, well, just real quick, another thing in the federal government. This was last week. We didn't get to it, but this is epic. So Biden tried to change Title IX with executive.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that teachers in class, high school, college, grade school, have to use the pronouns that the students want them to use rather than what reality dictates. And federal court struck that down. So, yeah, though it does seem like things are really changing in the milieu, the social.
Well, it
milieu.
feels like not only it almost feels like there's a big sigh of relief throughout the country.
Yeah.
That we don't have to play this stupid game anymore.
Yeah.
Like we don't have to play the DEI game. We don't have to act like things are one way when they're really another. We don't have to kowtow to the power that's pushing this stuff down. Like people are like, whew. And maybe Zuckerberg's a good example of that.
Yes, another good. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like why, and it's sort of everything. We always said. I mean, sooner or later the cows come home to roost.
Yeah.
Or the chickens come home to roost. You can't. You just can't live in this non-reality world, and everybody's worried that it was going to take over, me included, for a while. But you just like to think, all right, sooner or later, common sense has to prevail here.
Yeah.
And it feels like people are pushing back against the insanity. Now, what I'm worried about is that it goes too far the other way, or or we don't carry through with some of the stuff that these people are promising.
Yeah.
Don't let the power get to you.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, like yesterday, to your point, Steve, like faced with reality that trucks use diesel. California yesterday withdrew its regulation that was going to ban all trucks unless they were 100% electric powered.
Yeah, because now they need trucks to build their damn houses.
Well,
exactly.
And nobody's making a truck. It would weigh like 100 tons or something crazy for a battery to be that
Diesel
big.
trucks, even without the cow piss, are about as efficient and clean as they've ever been. And without the DEF, it's so stupid.
I mean, they must have been hearing from truckers and truck companies that are saying, "I guess we're not going to.
We're not going
to deliver.
You're not getting anything in this
the
state."
Regulatory scheme. I don't know the details of it, but a family member was a trucker, and it was getting to the point where truckers wouldn't deliver out there, or if you wanted something delivered to California, like the price is skyrocketing because it was such a pain in the ass to deal with their regulatory nonsense.
Yeah.
And I don't think you have an RV with a trailer and you pull stuff. It's like
Yeah.
I think I would. I couldn't get licensed out there. I think I can grandfather in if I pull my RV out there, but I have to have special licenses and special.
Well, they have a rule
you
can't buy a new RV after like 2035. We'll see what happens with
There's
that.
no way it just can't. It can't. Because what's going to happen now? If you can't buy a new RV and all their houses are burned down, what's the temporary housing? How are they going to fix that one, Gavin?
Yeah, good
Put
luck,
that in your
man.
Marshall Plan and smoke it.
You were talking about Israel and Hamas, a ceasefire. You know, it was interesting. We had Mark Patinkin in here last month, who's an expert on Jewish-Arab relations, wrote a book. And we were all basically saying, how do two sides who are promising to exterminate each other? I mean, Netanyahu, I'm not speaking for Jews, but Netanyahu said very clearly he wants to wipe out Hamas completely and totally, which has resulted in the Red Cross, Red Crescent saying maybe 40,000, maybe 50,000 Gazans have paid the price for Israel to do that in deaths. I mean, that's an enormous amount of people to die to go after the bad guys. But on the other hand, what happened on October the 5th last year was, in 2023, was
October 7th,
was monstrous, you know, and genocidal on its side. So the idea that this is a ceasefire, okay, I bet it doesn't last long, number one. I bet all the hostages, number two, aren't really exchanged.
We'll see.
We'll see.
What was there was like 33 in the first round or something like that, and then
Hamas has a small number, but they're getting hundreds of Palestinians released by the Israelis.
We'll see. I mean, but look, it's a better deal than Hamas was offering pre-Trump election.
It's better than killing them all,
and it's better than killing them all, I guess. And it's it is. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
We'll see.
Right.
I mean, to me, this is very easy. There's American hostages. The American government is involved.
Yeah, and Trump has gotten some credit from Biden's State Department spokesman, who has said that the Trump representative to these negotiations was critical, is what he said. Because I can only see Hamas and Israel saying, well, hey, Biden representative, you're speaking for a guy who's in office for the next 2 days. Where's the continuity? You know, who's going to follow through?
And in the backdrop, you got Trump saying, look, there's going to be hell to pay. You release the hostages or hell to pay. And I look, that is the stance that he should take.
It's very Reagan-esque, like when the Iranians released all those hostages right when Ronald took over from Jimmy.
Right. Yeah.
Very similar.
I mean, and it makes sense, right? They have exploited weakness, and they realize that there's a new sheriff in town, and it's not going to be weak.
Mm-hmm.
So, guys, here in Ohio,
or at least they have to respect it.
Yes.
Right.
So here in Ohio, there is this epic thing that was announced yesterday or the day before, forget which now, by Governor DeWine. This company called Anduril, they're an autonomous drone manufacturer. They were founded by a 32-year-old Cal State dropout by the name of Palmer Luckey. And which sounds like Steve.
Got a good name.
Sound like you down at the racetrack, right? You know. And anyway, his brother-in-law is Matt Gaetz, which is an interesting little footnote. I don't know, you know, like Matt Gaetz was going to be the attorney general for Trump, but he's out. At any rate, this 32-year-old guy invented something called the Oculus virtual reality headset. Right? That's where he got all his money. He's raised $1.5 billion for this new company called Anduril, Anduril. The plant will be at Rickenbacker in Pickaway County, so a little bit near Rickenbacker.
Yep.
Okay.
But the plant is Pickaway.
In Pickaway County.
Okay.
It's going to be called the Arsenal One plant. 4,000 employees is what they're saying. Now, we'll see what Jobs Ohio and the state of Ohio gave up for this, you know, kind of like Intel. They're going to make 3 kinds of drones. So this is real like Terminator stuff, right? This is like Skynet when it went self-aware or something. So these are autonomous drones, right? You program them. I guess you tell them the envelope of what they're looking to kill, and then no human being tells them to kill it. It's just the software says, go kill that thing. So you create a target profile, and then it hits it. So, you know, can that get hacked? I mean, there's a lot of issues. But at any rate, these are big drones. They are not making these little foot-wide mini drones. That they are talking about making 30,000 of each of these. One is a jet fighter, autonomous, non-crewed jet fighter called the Fury. And what that'll do is it'll go up and fly with our manned jets. And they will take the incoming surface-to-air missiles and do the dirty jobs that are real dangerous so that our manned crews can do the higher order missions. That's the theory of this full-size aircraft called the Fury. Then they're going to build something called a Roadrunner. These are one-way interceptors. So when you launch these things, evidently they don't have wheels where they come back. Like you launch it, it's on a kill mission. It goes until it finds whatever it kind of like when a submarine, I guess, puts a torpedo in the water.
Yeah.
It's going to keep going until it runs out of fuel or it kills something.
Kamikaze, basically.
And then the third thing's called a Barracuda, and this is a cruise missile that goes between 100 and 500 miles. And the idea is all of these products, so their assembly line will not look like a traditional assembly line, like if you go to Lockheed Martin or Boeing. They're using 3D printing and quick manufacturing techniques to make these on the tens of thousands of quantities. So it's a little scary to me. I'm irked, but the Chinese are doing this, the Russians are doing it.
Yeah, we're playing the game.
And we got to keep up with them, I guess. But the idea that we're going to put shit up there that kills people and we're not in control, just the software, whatever some guy wrote.
Yeah.
That's what it kills.
As long as Matthew Broderick's still around, we're going to be okay. Because if anybody remembers the war games, he solved all these problems.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. I guess my mind goes that the easier you make it to kill, the easier it is to kill.
Yeah, but it's always been easy to kill.
It has been. We keep making it easier and easier, and it takes that human element out of can we come to terms?
Yeah,
to talk about a middle ground, so we don't have to have tens of thousands of collateral.
There's
of people that we see in Palestine.
Right.
Look, I was a Star Trek.
Happen.
I was a Star Trek geek when I was a kid. I used to watch those episodes. And there's I can't remember what it's called, but there's an episode of Star Trek where they went to this foreign land, as they do, and they encountered Captain Kirk and crew encountered this war that was going on between two, I guess, competing countries in whatever world they were in, and it had sort of degraded or maybe advanced, depending on who you were asking, to there would be a fake bomb that would drop, and the computer would determine that killed 500,000 people or 500 people. So then 500 people on one side had agreed they had to go into this death chamber and die.
Wow.
And the theory of the theme of the show at the end was to get rid of that and actually resort back to hand-to-hand killing, because then it meant something. And the act of killing somebody, it was very personal, and it almost ended the war immediately. Right. And look, Gene Roddenberry was sort of a genius that way, but he had some interesting some interesting moral dilemmas in Star Trek. But it sort of reminds me of that.
Well, I think warriors like Pete Hegseth and my brother John, who was in Desert Storm, they would tell you probably that, like, just imagine a human shield situation, right? And as a Tomahawk missile, which is human controlled, as that's cruising in on that building, if the spotter goes, holy crap, there's 300 school children in this mosque where the terrorists are, we can't blow that up. They can tell the damn thing not to do it. But if you've pre-programmed some kind of autonomous drone, there's no way to call off the dogs.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, as soon as AI maybe advances enough where they could find out the drone can figure it out on its own and act on its own. I said his, act on its own. Right. I don't know. Look, I mean,
an ethical autonomous drone.
Yeah, there's some
we'll see.
Interesting philosophical and moral debates to be had about this. But I agree with you. We can't be left behind.
We can't.
No.
If they're going to do it, right?
So, look, this is that seesaw of...
It is.
It's almost like the
Matrix.
nuclear
arms race back in the day.
Like the Matrix movies, where everything happens at machine speed. The human being could not go this way and dodge bullets and do all that stuff like Keanu was doing. That's what they're predicting war is going to be like.
Yeah,
it's going to be like machine robot dogs with big machine guns killing other robot dogs, while people back at headquarters are playing video games.
Yeah.
It's just
Which it accomplishes nothing. I mean, again, back to that theory that like human death and suffering as a result of war, while horrible, ended wars. You know, it's
right.
You know, it's such a
it's bringing Putin and Zelensky to the table now.
Right. But what ends the war if nobody's dying?
Well, Russia and Ukraine are both exhausted. I mean, I think they've said Russia has lost over 500,000 troops. Man. North Korea has lost a bunch because they came to their rescue. Now those guys are being killed.
It's too much. The resources are running out, and that ends war. But
that's what ends. Right.
You know, so now, I mean, like you said, it's be like a video game. So I'm sure there are people a lot smarter than we are thinking this stuff through.
Yeah, the 32-year-old guy.
Yeah.
Well,
let's hope.
Maybe but it's in Ohio. He can come to our table.
We have time. Do we have time for some justice stuff?
Yeah, justice for all.
Okay, so Steve, I think you're going to love this case. It's a horrible case, but you'll love the possibilities here. I think there's more to the story. Let me roll this out. So there is a police department in a little town in Ohio called Mantua, and it is in Portage County. And a female law enforcement officer of some tenure, I forget exactly how many years, 8-10 years, something like that. She's single, has a child, and Child Services and the Portage County Sheriff showed up at the police officer's house and took her child on some sort of allegation. No court finding, but just an allegation that the child was in some sort of danger.
So the cops get a tip that there's a kid in danger.
The sheriff went and took a child from a police officer.
Oh, it was another police officer's child.
Yes.
Okay.
She is a Mantua city or village police officer inside of Portage County, and the sheriff's department of Portage County took her kid away, confiscated her phone, and this is where I think there's more to this story. So the detective, they ended up dropping the charges because there was no evidence that her child was in any danger. So they dropped that. She got her child back the next day. But in the meantime, they took her phone, her cell phone, and there were some sexy
racy pictures.
Racy pictures on her phone. And the detective started circulating them, allegedly, around the sheriff's department. So now she has a big fat lawsuit against the sheriff's department.
Wow.
And I'm just wondering, it seems like maybe somebody had an axe to grind. There's who knows, but this is wrought with all sorts of potential
metaphorical problems. Like you got the local cops and you got the sheriffs.
Yeah.
So immediately there's that friction potentially. And then you've got men and women. Immediately there's that friction. Yeah. Maybe she was dating somebody else in one police department, or it didn't go well with another. There's going to be an interpersonal relationship
I think so.
At the heart of this. I can almost guarantee it. Or maybe it's just guys will be just pigs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Guys are pigs. And I deal with this a lot in the high school, at the high school level.
Wow.
Where, somebody gets a picture of their girlfriend and they break up, or their buddy finds it and sends it to another buddy. And next thing you know, it's all over the school.
Yeah.
And people are, and that has its own connotations, because then if it's a minor, then you've got potential child pornography stuff.
Yeah.
But we try to teach these kids. And when I talk to these kids, there's lots of programs in juvenile courts trying to teach guys, young men and women, don't send this don't have this stuff. Yeah. Don't play with this kind of fire. And if you do get these pictures, have some respect here. Clearly these sheriffs didn't.
They're behaving like high school
They're
kids.
pigs.
Exactly.
They're behaving like pigs.
Well, exactly, because it's her phone. If she didn't, you can have any kind of pictures on the phone, didn't disseminate. And then going back to the trauma on that kid for a day.
Yeah. Having to get yanked from his home.
That's unfrickin' believable.
Yeah, just behaving like
just that.
Like juvenile pigs. And I guess there's something to be said here, though. It doesn't mean that all men are pigs.
No.
But all men can be. Yeah. And we have to conform our behavior to what is good. We have to point in the right direction, and it degrades quickly when you get in a group like this.
Yeah.
The other justice thing that I thought this is off the hook, and I bet you guys are like, yeah, I could see this coming. So Apple settled for 3 months. Apple had some kind of backdoor into everybody's Siri, and For $95 million, they settled so for that 3 months, they just settled $95 million bucks. The lawyers got $29 million plus $1 million in their costs out of that 95, because the Siri is spying. Like you know, come on.
This is exactly why I've never activated Siri or what's the Alexis?
This damn thing is spying on us right now.
It is. Well, look,
It is.
I
guarantee you,
it is.
If I say something like Pampers or diapers
It'll
enough
show
times, I'm going to see a feed of diapers at some point in time,
happens.
and there's no connection in the world why I should see diapers.
Every now and then I look at my wife and I'm like, look what just showed up on my Facebook feed.
Exactly.
And we were talking about this 2 days ago, and I've never talked about this particular product ever before.
Yes. Yes.
How
Only in the presence of your phone.
Coincidence? I need my foil hat because there's something going on.
Well, and coming from a company that says they protect your privacy,
It's
that's kind of the pinnacle
Well, the
of this
more they
whole
say
thing.
they protect your privacy, the less you can believe it.
Right. And I kind of believe that with Apple. Apple's done a really good, I thought, has done a pretty good job of it. Now this, you're as bad as Google.
For whatever it's worth, Apple was the most reluctant to give up passwords and things like that to the government on subpoenas.
Yes.
But all right, let's finish it up with wonderfully outrageous things.
Yeah, some good and bad stuff. Yeah. Who goes first?
I can go. I think wonderful Ohio drivers who find themselves behind the wheel during heavy snow showers can go now onto Waze and see where the snowplows are.
That way they
That
can.
is cool.
I love that.
That way they can look at their phone while they're driving.
Right.
And say, I'm not going to hit that snowplow.
But I think it goes back to safety of the plows, know where they are, and kind of know where the roads are. I think it's a great idea.
I will
think
take
it's
my
a great
hat off
idea.
to Central Ohio. We had some snow, and it was a bad storm. Now, the timing was helpful because of the weekend, but they did a great job.
Yes,
Yeah.
they did.
I have not always been.
Yeah.
It was like half a foot, wasn't it?
And
It-
the roads
easily.
were in pretty. It was a Monday, I
They
think,
did a good
of all
job.
things, and the
Yeah.
roads were pretty clean. We called
I
them.
agree.
If we can
hats
make
off.
it safer for those
And
guys,
I don't always say that.
those guys
No.
and gals that are the drivers, and
Good
as
job.
a driver too, knowing where they are through the Waze app, which most of us use at some point in time, I think it's a great idea.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That is a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, like to see that.
Yeah.
Steve-O, you got anything right now?
Well, we got the Buckeyes, folks.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
The Ohio
God.
State Buckeyes
Yeah.
beating
Wow.
Texas.
Wow, what a game!
Wow.
I mean, look, anybody, and I have been critical of the football playoff scheme because we had some pretty crappy games early on, and then I think Oregon sort of got the shaft having to play like the best team in their first game after being on. Like there were some flaws with it,
Right.
but those couple of games were awesome.
Yeah.
And if you're an Ohio State fan, it's even more awesome. That play at the end. I mean, wow.
Wow, I know.
It just, I mean, you
Put
couldn't get
himself
more
in
excited.
legend status.
In
bottom
legend
line. Yeah.
status.
Yep.
Yeah, Jack Sawyer coming through.
Good for him.
And I got to tell you, there's going to be a great game on Monday, and we'll be talking about the huge margin of victory for Ohio State beating Notre Dame. Look, I love the Catholics. You guys are great, Norm. No disrespect, but yeah,
There's a lot of Catholic universities. Notre Dame's not the only one. Like, there's a lot of Boston U fans, right?
Yeah.
Boston College.
Yeah, that's probably going to be, I bet, a record breaker in regards to viewership.
Oh, my.
Just because the amount of followers the OSU and Notre Dame.
Did you hear
worldwide.
You hear what the cheap tickets are?
like $1,800 to get.
I heard
one thing.
4,000.
Really?
I looked because I was going to take my boy, and it was like $1,800. It's like a piece. Like I can't. Do that.
Wow. Well, that's probably early on too.
That was the day of, right?
Yeah.
right.
I heard
Actually, it was before the game. I was looking before the game because I knew we were going to be Texas. I said so right here.
I heard on WTVN that it's up to 4,000.
Yeah,
from
that's
Matt,
about right.
Matt McCoy, the
Crazy,
reporter there.
and it's close and it's easy.
Well,
Yeah.
close enough. It's drivable for
Right.
us.
It's
exactly.
drivable.
Yeah.
Atlanta.
Yep.
Well, I'll do a good and bad, and if you guys want to do it bad, you
we'll have
can.
fun.
So, we'll do the good first. So, my favorite place in Central Ohio reopened this week. It's called Ghost Rider. They're in
I didn't know
Johns-
they were
Great-
closed
great
down.
restaurant.
They closed in order to retool the menu and
okay.
restructure things. They now will have sports events on. They turn the noise off and have music. But like I watched the Buckeye Texas game there.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, it was great. And so anyway, good luck to them. Great staff,
Great
great
chef,
owners.
great staff, great.
So here we go for them. On the bad side, it pained me a little bit that Jimmy Carter, who is was a great human being, It pained me a little that all the news outlets felt the need to cover all of his defects and all of, and I'm like, my God, the guy died at 100 years old, and he survived the longest of any president post-presidency, 45 years. And I'm like, you know what? Just talk about the good stuff.
Yeah.
Honestly.
That's the time to do it.
That's the time to do it. Instead, they had to go revisit the Iran hostage mission that failed, and he pardoned the draft dodgers who went to Canada, and this with the economy and his Malaise speech and all that stuff. And I'm like, guys, for a day, honestly.
Yeah.
Rather than doing his entire biography, let's just celebrate the fact this is a great humanitarian who made a bunch of mistakes. Like
I will say this.
We all do.
Yeah.
He liked the country.
He
was
yes.
He was no despot, and he was no despicable person, and he had high moral ethics.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a good man.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. My bad is kind of a sad Bob Uecker. Passed away.
Good one.
It's kind of hurtful, not hurtful, but it's just sad that, all these icons are now that affected our growing up are now passing away. But when I heard Bob Uecker, I got another one.
Just a bit outside. It's funny. Now, my son, my oldest son, 20 years old, sent me a text. Hey, that guy in the Major League movie, he died. I think his name was Bob Uecker. Like, he's sort of telling me, like, in case you don't know who he is.
Yeah, right. One of
he's
those.
the guy in Major League. I'm like, look, dude.
Yeah, right.
Look, I grew up. So it's just, it's so.
Ball 8.
And I talk to, my lawyer talk show, and one of the series is they don't teach that in law school. So I had a young law student that works for me upstairs in the law practice, and we talked about Bob Uecker. He knew who he was.
Yeah.
Can I, in closing, if we're going to close, I'm reading this book about Carroll Shelby, and this comes out of nowhere. It's just a funny joke. So so Carroll Shelby's from Texas, so he's telling this on himself. And Carroll Shelby, the great racer and all that, won Le Mans and all this stuff. So anyway, he's saying to somebody, "Do you know how they bury Texans when they die?" Right? And the guy goes, "No, Carroll. How do they?" He says, "They squeeze the shit out of him and then put him in a matchbox." Because basically they're all full of shit. I mean, that's the unsaid part. I'm just like, oh my God, that is gorgeous.
So with Norm's race humor, we will end it for CommonSenseOhioShow.com. Look, a couple things going into the new year as we launch the 2025 campaign. We're just asking a little bit of help from you folks. Why don't you check us out on all the various platforms? You can subscribe in the podcast world to wherever you do, whether it's Spotify or whether it's Apple or Google or wherever you get a podcast, you can do it. But the world has shifted over to the social media platforms like Rumble, here we are, YouTube, there we are, Facebook, there we are. We could really use your subscription. We could use your share. We could use your support. We are talking to sponsors or potential sponsors. If you want in that mix too, just reach out. You can do that at CommonSenseOhioShow.com. We are coming at you right from the middle each and every Friday. Until now.